In the village of Nsuda, located in the valley between two mountains, Mount Mbago and Mount Ajo, a spring flowed down Mount Ajo and formed a very clear river running across the village. The farmers prided themselves on their opulent harvest of cassava and yam, as well as maize and constant supply of fresh vegetables. However, tragedy struck when the spring flowing force began to slow down and the river began to dry up. The crops did not do so well and the villagers' prosperity slowly eroded. It was at this desperate time that Oma, Udochi, and Chimdi got the flattering offer of a job abroad in the white man's land. The offer was mouth-watering. The ladies, bound by friendship, screamed, danced, hugged each other in excitement. They mimicked the words of Olumide when he told them about the offer. Olumide is a Yoruba man who had come to Nsoda to hire people for some jobs. He was well-dressed and spoke the white man's language. Being that the waters and the airways to Oyibo land were in Lagos, it was difficult for anyone to argue about Olumide's certainty, knowledge and intentions. Their parents were happy their daughters made the list. This is a golden opportunity, Shimdi said. We will not only help our families, but be among the first to go to Oyibo land, unequipped. Exactly, and we will learn to speak through the nose, Udochi agreed. The three laughed heartily. The night before the journey, none of them could sleep. They were too excited to. First thing in the morning, they were ready to go, each hugging and bidding their families goodbye. Their parents blessed them as they left home to meet Olumide and the others at their takeoff point. The parents walked at some distance, watching as their daughters joined the group, and they got in a van that waited to convey them to Lagos, from where they would prepare for the journey to their final destination. Chimdi woke up with a start. Where are we? She wondered. Why is the van still moving? Everyone is asleep except for the two hefty men. One sat at the seat by the door and the other in the front with the driver. She quietly looked around. Udoshi and Oma were beside her, both deeply asleep. Just like everyone else, she dipped her hand into her pocket. The watch her father gave her was there. It was the most expensive thing her family owned. Her father had thought it would suit her to have something fancy to wear when she got to Igbo land. She shut her eyes and rolled over as the men by the door turned to look at them. She was scared she might be in danger. She fidgeted as if in a dream and muttered a few words, then rested back, placing her head on Udochi's shoulder, facing away from the man. She's just dreaming, she heard the man say to the other. I saw her eyes open, the driver said. She is probably a sleepwalker. You know, those people sometimes sleep with their eyes wide open, the second man added. She pinched herself. She did not think wrong. Her instinct was right. Something was wrong, but she could not measure the extent. She pulled her scarf across her face and pressed the watch. It was Sunday. Then she became utterly frightened. 3:59 a.m. Sunday morning. They had left home on Friday morning. From Nsuda to Lagos was a day's journey. It had been 2 days already. The van kept moving, and Chimdi continued to play sleeping, taking time to peep out the window. On the third night, the van turned away from the tarred road and came to a halt before a bleak compound surrounded by barbed wire. Olumide stood at the gate with a sinister sneer. The men in the van with them said something, and everyone woke up. Then they were dragged out and thrown into a damp, dark pit within the compound. It was then that Shimdi finally placed her finger on what the danger was. This is not Lagos, Udoshi said with a trembling voice. Where are we? Oma asked, fear in her voice. We've been sold, Shimdi said without an iota of doubt in her voice. Bile rose in her throat, and the anger burned hot. The promise was a lie, a sugar-coated lie, to lure them out of their homes. The weeks that followed became a relentless nightmare. They were not the only ones in the pit. It was a very big one and housed women from different corners of the country, each lured by a false promise. They could hear the bargain when men came to meet their captors. The women were nothing but commodities to be sold to the highest bidder, or live their lives in servitude for the benefit of their masters. The women were all frightened and some had begun losing their spirits. The captors came, led by Olumide. They lowered a ladder for the person they called to come up. If the person returned to the pit, they knew the deal did not work. If the person didn't, then she now belonged to the new master. No one ever returned to tell them what their new life had become after she was sold. Hindu was determined. She encouraged her friends to have faith. Her spirit was infectious. It did not only influence her friends, but some other women in the pit with them. When it was manual labor time, they all crawled out of the pit and returned to the hole at night. One evening, Olumide led his men and moved them into rooms in the building. This was not an act to alleviate their pain, but a plot to break the bonds growing between them. Chimdi was moved to a different room from Oma and Udochi. As the ladies settled in the rooms they were placed, they realized it was just as good as the pit. The rooms were small for the number of people placed in one. They could barely lie down to sleep. Some still had to sleep with their head on their propped up knees. The only moment of freedom was when they braided each other's hair, ready to be paraded before the bidders. Oma and Udochi knew their friend was not easily crushed. They hoped to see her when they went for manual labor or to be paraded for the buyers. A glance, a nod, or a whisper would mean a lot. They held on to this hope. Chimdi thought hard about their situation and what to do. She and her friends can't possibly live the rest of their lives like this. Even if they resign to fate, what about their families? Their parents had sent them out with so much hope in their eyes. Now they were separated. She could only hope to catch a glimpse of her friends during labor time and burial time. During both occasions, they may not be able to speak to each other, but it was enough to know they were all right. As she mulled things over in her mind, she remembered the age-long secret message system from their tribe. Her father had made her learn every bit of it, even though she was not interested in hairstyling. To avoid feeling bored during the training, she had cajoled her two friends to join her. In the kingdom of Nsuda, cornrows were not just a hairstyle but a language. Patterns told stories, carried secrets, and spoke in silent codes. Only those versed in this ancient way understood the messages. To every other person, it was just art and fashion. I got it! Shindy screamed and jumped excitedly in her head. Outwardly, she remained calm. The masters must not suspect her. They already isolated her from her friends. She must keep up the facade of having been broken for her plan to succeed. She must tell her friends there is hope. In the evening, they were told they had a long day ahead the next day. Oyibo men were coming for the bidding that day and they must look their best. Chimdi took the opportunity. She drew the style she wanted on the sand for Ayomide. I know you are not Igbo, but try to get my style right. I always do yours well, she said. Don't worry. The last time was because I didn't know if I could trust you, Ayomide answered. You will like it this time, I promise. When the hair braiding session was over, Chimdi viewed her hair in the mirror with satisfaction. How is it? Ayomide asked. Perfect, Chimdi said. Thank you. That's right, she thought to herself. Thank you for being the tool that will help me and my best friends out of the hole. And if fate wills, we will take you along. But until we move, just style my hair. And when the captors came to take them for the parade the next day, Chimdi walked with her head down like all the broken women. But on her head, she carried a plan. When it was her turn to stand before the bidders, she made sure to turn her head around many times that they lost interest in her, but the message was passed. We will get out of here soon, Udoshi mouthed. Oma glanced at her and she signaled that she faced the stage. I was awake last day journey here. Send a message when we meet. Chimdi was called back as she was not selected. It was the same for her friends. Udoshi and Norma returned to their room with hope in their hearts. That's right. We will braid our way out of here, Udoshi whispered. How did we not think of that earlier? Oma asked no one in particular. Udoshi pinched her. They must not raise any suspicions or their friends' effort would be in vain. Before Labour the next 2 days, Oma had changed her hairstyle. She argued that the one she wore 2 days ago did not enhance her beauty, and that was why she was not chosen. She would experiment with styles to find her fit. Everyone ignored her. She was superficial. They all noticed that from the beginning. But what they did not know is that her vanity this time was a cover. As they walked in the field of the master who hired them, Chimdi nodded at her friends in greeting, and Oma tilted her head as she walked. Her hair was intricately plaited, a subtle design running along her scalp. Chimdi clapped twice as if she were dusting her hands. Oma picked up her basket and joined the line to the harvest house. The message was clear. Chimdi smiled. The pattern on Oma's head mimicked the winding path through the compound, the layout of the pit, the guard stations and movements. The message was clear. They need to study their surroundings. The three friends began changing their hairstyle regularly. Ayomide followed suit. Chimde's argument that was one of the very few joys left in their lives was valid. Each braid carried vital information: location of keys, the action plan, the timing of the guards, the weak points in the compound security defenses, and the ladies who may sabotage their plans. One evening, Chimdi noticed a crack in the pit as they walked past it on their way from the sales parade. She could not help but take a second look. How come she had not noticed this before? The pit led to a water drainage tunnel. Keep the line moving, a guard yelled. Chimdi continued walking. That week before manual labor time, she had changed her hair pattern to a design that resembled a crack in a wall, leading to a hidden path. The outer cornrow pattern mimicked the pit. The next day after labor came the impromptu head count. Udoshi wore 3 zigzag rows, signifying agreements. Their understanding of the captor's operations had become really good. They knew the head count would happen that week, so they changed their hairstyles thrice. The path has been decided. All that was left was the time of escape. One evening, Oma roamed around the compound like she usually did mindlessly. Having been termed the stupidest of them all, she had the advantage of walking around when others could not. She was not seen as a threat. The guards even had the habit of praising her beauty and asking her to return to her room. On one of such evenings, he overheard a discussion. We will move them out of the compound in 3 days, Mr. Olumide told his boys. We have many requests from the buyers, no parades and bidding. They are offering juicy amounts even for the stupid ones. 3 days it is, boss, they responded. Omar dodged when Mr. Olumide and his right-hand man came out of the room. He hid behind a drum until they were gone. Then she crawled back to her room in the darkness. She whispered what she heard to Dochi. The next day was labor time, and Doshi and Norma wore the style for desperation and called to immediate action. A warning sign. Time is up. We leave now or lose everything. Hindi murmured as her friends walked past her. She clapped her hands twice. The message was passed. After labor, Chimdi asked Ayomide to change her hairstyle for her. Ayomide was tired and asked to do it the next day, but she insisted and promised to give her a surprise gift she could never imagine she would have. Curious about what she would get, Ayomide braided the style Chimdi drew on the ground. The guards gathered all the women for head count that night. Chimdi wore a pattern that showed someone in the pit, down a path, and the early bird beside it. Udoshi and Oma nodded. Location and time set. It was now or never. At about 3:30 a.m. the next day, Chimdi saw her friends making their way silently down the pit. She had snuck out earlier, taking Ayomide with her, claiming this was the only time she would get the surprise she promised. If she did not come with her, she should forfeit. "No way I'm letting you off the hook," Ayomide had said, and followed her new friend. Once her friends were down the pit, Shindy picked up a makeshift tool she had thrown in the pit carelessly the other day without suspicion. She scrapped at the metal, but the sound didn't draw attention to them. Oma and Odoshi had set fire at two different points in the compound before descending the pit. The chaos that followed the fire was their cover. The guards focused on quenching the fires and guarding the gates. As every guard moved towards the fire and the gate, the lady slipped through the tunnel. Ayomide could not believe her eyes. The stench was overpowering, but she was not the only one that did not care. She did not need the answer. She knew what her friend's gift to her was: freedom. She followed hard on the three friends' tails. The tunnel led them to the edge of the forest. Chimdi had made this trip twice before. He had arranged a change of clothes for them and some food, supplies she hid from the farm harvest they wrought. Once they were outside the tunnel, the ladies changed their clothes and headed south. Hind remembered the landmarks she had seen as they arrived clearly. As soon as they got close to town, she voted they leave the road. Mingling with regular people became their cover. Back in the captors camp, the fire had been quenched and order restored. Mr. Lumide was frantic. "Head count now!" he yelled. The guards brought out the ladies and numbered them. 4 were missing. The traffickers sounded the alarm and the guards began looking for the missing ladies. They found the escape route and followed it, but all they saw at the end of the tunnel were their stinky clothes that they had discarded. They took a van down the road and drove for hours, but the ladies were nowhere in sight. "Search the town!" They could not have gotten far. Miss Olumide barked. "Yes, sir," the guards responded, but they were tired. So when they drove out of the compound, they decided to take a rest. Meanwhile, the four ladies had found their way to the nearest river. Here, they washed up and changed their hairstyles. For the first time, it dawned on Ayomide that the hairstyles Chimdi insisted she braids, as it were messages. Each pattern meant something. She did not know what they stood for, but she would lend a hand to get them out of here. They heard someone speak Yoruba, so she approached the man to ask for direction. Then she described the direction to her new friends. Chimdi broke it down into 4 hairstyles. The ladies used sticks and thorns from a plant nearby to cut and braid the styles. They ate and began their journey. The ladies moved swiftly, their cornrows serving as their navigation system. At midday, when they sat down to rest, they heard a dog bark and a whistle in the distance. The fishermen here did not use dogs. They must make haste before they are found out. The aim was to cross the river. As they stood close to where the boats and canoes berthed, a fishmonger mistook them as part of his laborers to move the fish he had purchased. "Bull radiance," Homer expressed. The ladies without argument loaded the seafood and sat in the boat with their new master. The boat sped off just before the guards arrived there. The people said they had not seen the ladies they described, only workers were here. When the boat arrived at its destination, the ladies joined to offload the goods and receive the wage for the day's work. They bid the boat goodbye and said they would work from this side tomorrow. "Freedom at last!" Udochi exclaimed. Ayomide could not hold her tears. She hugged Shindi tightly. Thank you, my friend," she said, as the tears choked her breath. Shindi hugged her back. "We still have a long way to go. We are still far from home," Shindi said. "That's true," Udochi added. "We need to decide what to do next." "Making a little money here to help us along the way while we figure out our next steps is not a bad idea," Mama suggested. "Count me in," Ayomide said. "That's all right. But first, We need to find a sheep boarding house around, Chimdi said. They all nodded in agreement. And stay out of trouble. We cannot draw any attention to ourselves, Chimdi added.